So let's go back to the presentation and I'll talk to you about what I'm seeing in the market. So silver squeeze predictions. I talked about back in February 1 of 2021 on Chris's program about how we were going to have a squeeze, but it was going to move more to the physical side of things. And that's what we were looking at. So we started here with what was going on with settlements and volume. Settlements were down last week. This week, they're actually positive, up 27 cents in most contracts. But if you look at last week, they were down 40 cents, 38 cents two times. And it's just a futures trade bringing silver down. People aren't too hot on it from a speculative perspective. However, if we look at what was delivered, it's pretty healthy this year. There's been more silver delivered this year than there is in a typical year. We're going to go to the actual metal delivery report as put out by the CME Clearing Group. These are the silver futures, as you can see right here. And we're going to look at year to date on how many have been delivered. So if you look at the numbers, we started off the year, or ended last year with a bang at 9,197 contracts. This year, we've had a bunch delivered, including a lot in March, a lot in May, a lot in July, and a lot in September. Typically, there are only about 6 big delivery months on Comex every year. So it's, you know, to have several months like that in silver is a pretty big deal. Now we're going to go to the CFTC COT report. You guys are going to see it as I load it in real time. I've done it so many times. The COT report is commitment of traders. One thing that I pointed out to you recently was for silver, and this is as of August 30th, the latest report they have, less than a week old, the swap dealers had gone net short. So if you look at swap dealers here, and you look at short versus long, they had changed from their historically short position to long. They're now long about 18,200 contracts, give or take, and about almost matched exactly on the opposite side by the managed money going short. So the managed money has become the dupes. Supposedly, if silver goes up, they would lose their money. The bullion banks are usually the smart money. They've gone long. That is something that predicts that we probably will go long on silver and the price coming up, although it hasn't happened now. It's totally understood how it hasn't happened, but it should happen before too long. And we're going to talk about the ETFs. So one of the ways in which I document the ETFs or the movement out of silver's ETFs. If you remember what silver squeeze was back in late January, February 2021, it was people going into SLV. It was largely the young millennial crowd. It was largely the people just now getting into silver from Wall Street Silver, just getting into it. They were going to SLV to buy shares of SLV. They bought shares of SLV because they believed that that basically would squeeze silver. It didn't work because SLV doesn't have redemption rights for all but like a certain group of people. And so they were never going to get it off the market. It just moved from one bucket to another. But the LBMA did come out months later and say that silver squeeze would have bankrupted, or that movement of silver into SLV from all those shares bought. Because remember, when you buy share SLV, they're supposed to have the silver. If that had gone on for another week to 2 weeks, the entire London market would have been bankrupt of free silver. And that was them admitting they didn't have enough to supply demand for very long. So the SLV didn't squeeze silver, but it highlighted the weakness in silver inventories in one of the major markets in London. There's also a lot of weakness going on in the Comex as well. But I wanted to point out there's been a lot of movement out of silver. You've had 28 million ounces come off between the Comex and the ETFs over the last 4 weeks. You can see the iShares SLV, 18 million have come off. So instead of people buying, they're actually trying to take the physical out. Now, a lot of this buying is selling on the ETF is just paper selling, and it caused the price to drift. And that's an indication that generalist and managed money demand for silver is falling because they'll go into SLV and these other ETFs. So a lot of popular sentiment towards silver is short, and that's confirmed by the commitment of traders report as they've gone net short. So these people here, net short 52,000 contracts on the Comex, are the same people that are going to take it out of SLV, the same group of people. It's the managed money, those types. They're basically going short silver and redeeming silver. They're on the opposite side of the smart money. And I think ultimately they will be incorrect. Let's look at warehouse stockpiles. And by the way, this is Nick Laird's site, Gold Charts R Us. He has the best charts of anybody. I think they're great. I wanted to pull your attention to this chart right here. This is Comex delivery warehouse silver stocks. Now, the reason this is important is because there's 2 categories of silver, as I've talked about. I was one of the first people to talk about this almost 2 years ago. Now, everybody that comments on gold and silver talks about it because of all the times that I spent talking about this, about 50 times in 2020 and early 2021. I was educating people on the differences between eligible and registered. Eligible is here. It's the light green. That is private storage that on April 19th, 2020, the CME group admitted they don't know how much of that could ever come back on the market. They gave it a haircut of 50% and said at least 50%. That's probably not liquid. I would say it could be up to 100. It could be any amount between 0 and 100 because it's privately held. Just because it's on a warehouse at the depository does not mean that it's eligible for the futures trade. That's all private storage. It's a warehouse that participates in Comex. It's not owned and operated by Comex so that every ounce in there belongs to the futures market. The one that matters is registered stocks in this dark green. You can see that number has fallen from almost 160 million ounces back when we had the height of silver squeeze. This is silver squeeze right here. This is where people tried to get it from SLV, and all these inventories are coming into Comex. People figured out you couldn't squeeze it through an ETF that doesn't deliver for everybody, or for most of the people, unless you're authorized participant or a big shareholder. And so people rotated from SLV and getting their demand. And again, you can see that on this previous page where we talk about people that are no longer demanding silver through the ETFs. If we go back, they're shedding their paper silver, and then we're going to Comex to get delivery. Now, certainly a lot of these would have been industrial users, but some of it's investment demand. So we're at about 50 million ounces, give or take, under 15 million ounces of silver. And if I go look at NYMEX inventories over here, we're going to do the silver stocks. I've actually got that. Let me switch over to the Excel. I'm going to show you exactly how much we have by going to the Excel spreadsheet. I've highlighted silver for you. This is the latest as of today, report date 9/6. You can see overall, we're down to 47 million ounces of silver. We were at about 160 million ounces, as I just showed you from Gold Charts R Us. And this is what we've got left and registered. It's down to almost a quarter, a little bit more than a quarter as to what it was before. Almost a quarter of what it was a year and a half ago when silver squeeze began. Now, the question is, if people are pulling so much silver off of the industrial side of the market, is that part of silver squeeze? Yes, this has come down 100 million ounces almost. Okay, people are pulling it off the market. Okay, we also saw them pulling it out of the ETFs. Going back to the share screen, they're pulling it out not only of the Comex, this is the available liquid, they're also pulling it out of the ETFs. So here's the Comex numbers, here's the ETF numbers, are all negative. Okay, again, the people that are redeeming SLV are this money here, they are the managed money, and these types of people that have gone short and are selling SLV, whereas the smart money, the swap dealers, have gone net long by 18,000 contracts. Okay, they're not the ones selling, they're the ones accumulating. So the question is, did my silver squeeze prediction come true? Where I said, and let me put that back up on screen. I'm going to get that back up on screen for you guys, where I talked about the conference and I documented it, back on a bunch of channels, Liberty and Finance. I documented it on Chris's channel back, at the beginning of silver squeeze, how we would have, a run on silver. Again, I'm going to show you the presentation I gave at silver squeeze where I documented this. I was the first one to talk about it back then during this presentation when I was with Chris over those few days, and we were talking about silver stocks. Everybody told me you can't squeeze it through SLV and nothing can happen. Nobody can get the silver. And I said, no, what they're going to do is going to run it off of the two big exchanges. And that's exactly what's happened. We talked about silver being thin in London. I just showed you all the data for the Comex. I predicted it back then. That's why you come to Gold Silver Pros, because I talk about it before anybody else will. And that's why you're here. A lot of people talk about things as they happen. I talk about things before they happen. Again, made a 13-year call ahead of time on China introducing a competing currency to the dollar as world reserve currency. I said that back in 2010 when the book was published. I actually wrote it in 2009. So actually be a full 13 years. But it was published in summer 2010. So 12 years ahead of time, I talked about that. That's why you guys come to the channel, because I talk about stuff ahead of time. I talked about silver squeeze ahead of time. Is silver squeeze really happening? Yes, it's behind the scenes. And so when you look at stages, the first stage was to go and attack the generalist outlet, which is like an ETF, because that's what people think silver is. And then they realize, wait, that's just paper demand. It has really nothing to do with physical, except on the back end of the system in which London was being drained. But people are like, you're never going to be able to drain London through the ETF. And you've got other markets, we got to do it another way. And I told people, go get physical, go buy it off of retail. And people are like, well, retail is only part demand, and that's not a 1,000-ounce bar. Well, I bought a 1,000-ounce bar last year after New Orleans investment conference from Ian. I had sent that over to Jim. It says for sound money to cut up and sell through silverback precious metals. We did all of that. And the reason that we did that was because we knew that was a way to take it off, but we encouraged people to buy the retail products. And there's only so much silver in the world. And if you buy enough retail product, you'll drain the Comex because a lot of that silver coming off is going to be melted into retail products. So yes, we have confirmed that silver squeeze is in process. Those of you who are so negative on silver, don't worry too much about it. It will come back. People are asking all the time, when will the silver market break? And I think there's a divergence. I'm going to share that divergence with you for a moment. I'm going to go to the last part of my presentation that I gave last week in Spokane, Washington at Silver Symposium. I was the keynote for the second day. And I talked about, well, where they will diverge. So let's talk about that. Silver's here. I think silver has been commoditized because it's needed in support of industry. It's needed for the technocracy that all the governments want to build with the new central bank digital currencies. It's needed with green programs, medicine, space, military, everything. And however, so the industrial demand is really strong right now, and that's where most of the inventories are being drained. But some smart money has gotten in saying, wait a minute, we think silver is going to kind of go to the moon. You saw that with the $50 million order through Miles Franklin. Andy was on our program first time divulging that. Half of it gold, half of it silver, basically from a billionaire S here in Texas that we all believe could be Alice Walton. We don't know, it's not confirmed, but we believe it to be her. So that there is demand from big people in the silver market, but the small people haven't gotten in, the generalists haven't gotten in just yet, and enough of a way to fully bankrupt the system. But we think when there's a crisis, it won't just be the smart silver stackers. It will be everybody coming in, the generalist funds coming in, and they're going to come into physical because SLV is not going to be able to handle that demand, as we saw in February 2021. They're going to buy a bunch of shares of SLV. London's going to report no silver, and then the run's going to be on for the rest of the physical stocks. People are going to go get the 1,000-ounce bars on Comex. They're going to go get whatever retail they can, and it's going to be drained. And we're getting to the point where there's not enough inventory. Remember, we went down from 160 million free ounces on Comex to 47 million ounces I showed you today in the span of about a year and a half. And that's with behind the scenes, the smart money buying silver, you guys buying silver, me buying silver, industrial silver. What happens when people freak out about a banking crisis or something along those lines, and they go to silver en masse? The generalists get in. They're going to hit the generalist ETFs first and realize that doesn't work, and that doesn't give you real exposure to the physical. And then there's going to be a decoupling from those funds in the physical, and then people are going to go to the physical, and they're going to drain what little is left. So part of silver squeeze is not just the original thrust. That's the awareness stage. We're talking about awareness, people going to SLV. Then people start figuring out how the market works, and they start going to physical. And then once all that's dumped behind the scenes and it's gone and there's not a lot left, the next crisis that comes, people want to get in. The generalist wants to get in. They can't find it. That's where silver pops. Boom. And so we're in that sort of fade stage where people don't see the behind the scenes Comex stuff unless they come to this channel, or they look at Rafi or look at Michael, who are now reporting the same thing I've been reporting for 2 years. Then you'll see it. But if you don't come to one of those channels, you won't see it. And so the general person is not aware. So this time when they go into silver, it's going to pop because there's not going to be a lot of now available above ground supply like there was back in February 2021 in ETFs, that people believed in to demand that silver. So I do think that we're in silver squeeze. We're not quite done with it. We will get there eventually. Sorry, guys, that we had issues with the stream. It was YouTube and Zoom. It happens. Technology doesn't always work. It was rebroadcasting my stream back into the feed, even though I had no other windows open. That happens with Zoom and YouTube. I wish there was a better way. We've used other tools. There's not great ones. We may go to StreamYard to get rid of Zoom. But in any case, problem with technology. Sorry about the last one having issues, but I think I went over most of what I was going to go over anyway in that presentation. A couple of artifacts I didn't show you from the BIS. Oh, by the way, if you guys haven't seen it, I rebroadcast something on the channel that you may want to take a look at. Let me go to our channel and we'll talk about that really quick. We're going to go over here. I'm going to load it real quick for you guys. There's some cool stuff that you're going to want to pay attention to. When I talked about the BIS plan and its role in silver, I think silver has been commoditized, and therefore they essentially don't want silver trading as money anymore. And I think in this BIS video, they talk about what is going to be money. And I want to talk about that with you guys. So let me make sure I get the sound here on the share. Thank you guys for being patient as I reload everything that crashed during the YouTube issue. But we're going to go and talk about the rail system. And I want you guys to pay attention to what this guy says. This is a video that I put out on my channel. As you can see, originally aired July 25th. I was the first and only one to talk about this on social media, and then everybody copying me after. I keep hammering that point home because I'm first on a lot of this stuff. I am, and that's why you come to the channel. But I want to revisit this because this guy's talking about how they're building this system, and he's talking about interoperability. Just listen to this guy at a BIS presentation talk about how the entire world's going to CBDCs and how they're developing it.
Setting the stage so nicely. The financial system relies on rails to ship money and increasingly data between locations. Relies on a stack has payment rails and identity rails, just like a railway has tracks. Building tracks, digital tracks, is what we do in the Innovation Hub. And as Agustin mentioned, our tracks are the work streams that form the basis of our projects. And these are SubTech, RegTech, the use of new technology for financial supervision and regulatory compliance, next generation financial market infrastructures, central bank digital currency, CBDC, open finance, cybersecurity, and green finance.
So what he's talking about here are the regulations and the technology needed for the global CBDC system, FMIs, which I'm not going to talk about here, the actual central bank digital currencies, open finance, which is a way to develop standards and protocols so that all this system can work together. It's basically all the middleware software and standards that you'll need to implement the system worldwide. Cybersecurity, which is how to keep everything safe. I have a master's in cyber, so this is something right up my alley. I'm going to start a new series on cyber as we get into this. You guys stay tuned for it. We'll do something a couple times a month where I talk about cyber topics. And of course, green finance, which is basically the control of industry through carbon credits and things like that. Think about it. They're putting green credits and control of industry together with central bank digital currencies, all run by the same orgs. Excuse me. What are they going to do? They're going to tie it all together. They're going to control monetary flows and control corporate policy through this system. It's not just about money. It's about control of trade, control of products, control of everything. All of this is being done at the behest of the BIS. And this system, all the central banks have bought into it. I'm going to fast forward and talk here about a different aspect of the system. It's the actual CBDCs themselves are going to have multiple layers. Listen to this guy as he talks about it. Retail CBDC will be what you guys see, because from a retail perspective, it's how you're buying. Wholesale CBDC will be between sovereigns and central banks at that level. I think it's going to involve an ESDR or an SDR type of product. We'll have to, as a mechanism, we'll have to see how that works, because I think they haven't published the final paper for that yet. I'm still looking at it. And the multiple CBDCs. What I've said that nobody else picked up on was none of central bank digital currencies were fast enough to handle all trade across the world, all transactions. So each nation state is going to have at least one, and maybe even that's a federated system of like each municipality or state has one that rolls up into a ledger. Those ledgers for all the different CBDCs are combined and they're put onto this track, and that's all rolls up into the international system. That's how that works. Listen to how he describes this.
On the fiat currencies, they're rushing them. They're rushing to get them as quickly as possible.
For final destination, we are traveling on 3 different tracks: retail CBDC, wholesale CBDC, and for cross-border transactions, multiple CBDC. Our CBDC project portfolio has been developed under a strategy that was endorsed by the advisory committee. By design, it takes a wide-ranging approach that examines different types of CBDC and experiments with different technologies. All projects are directed towards a common objective: answering the questions that are at the top of your mind when thinking about CBDC. Our work is also closely linked with broader international initiatives. For retail CBDC, we are building projects on the menu of topics highlighted by Chapter 3 of the BIS Annual Economic Report.
All right, so he talks a lot about that. I also want to show you all the issues of CBDCs. They know about all this stuff. They've been developing this a lot longer than they ever let on. And they're working on all these issues, and I think they made progress on them all. I think the system's closer to coming out than you may believe. And to prove that, I'm going to show you something the Atlantic Council puts out. I put this in my presentation. We're going to switch back to that. We go here. Here's all the projects around the world. Now, lest you think that people aren't serious about CBDCs replacing fiat currencies, there are 112 countries that currently have active or deprecated projects. Only 12 of those are really inactive or canceled. The other 100 are going strong. 11 have been launched, 14 are in pilot mode, 26 in development, including the US one, 47 in research. They say research in US. I believe it's under development because you have Fednow and all those other things that I was going to talk about on this program. I won't be able to get to because of technology issues, but they've exploded around the world and there are projects going on. Of course, there's de-dollarization and what's going on, dumping of the dollar. You guys know all that. So putting this all together, what the heck are you talking about, Rob? We're talking about silver squeeze. Well, let's talk about silver and the role of the financial system here for a moment. I'm going to put a topper on this for you. Essentially, gold and silver have basically broken apart, and I'm going to emphasize that by going back to the presentation about what I said. So I said that they have diverged. Gold largely is going to be used as a high quality liquid asset for central banks, equivalent to cash or CBDCs and stock held of other banks, according to Basel III standards. Gold will be held in strong hands to discourage for individual use. They don't have to confiscate because most people don't have it. They're just going to tax it a certain way for you, the individual, versus central banks that are using it as an asset or as money. You're going to be expected to support the new CBDC infrastructure. For those of you wondering about gold and silver as money, gold will be used as money in the banking system. They'll discourage it for you and tax the hell out of it and try to do unrealized capital gains with the tax system to tax you on what you have so they can suck it out of you instead of you holding and then paying taxes on selling it. We talked about that on Saturday with our tax coverage with Independence Money about how they're going to do an unrealized gains tax on the new budget proposal, not in any new legislation, but in the budget proposal. They're basically effectively passing laws, which is going to tax you on unrealized gains, not only in gold and silver, but everything. They're going to drain all your money before you have a chance to get rid of it. It's going to kill people who tried to will it to next generations. It's going to kill people who did tax planning on when to sell. That unrealized capital gains tax is going to murder people, and it's going to take gold and silver out of the hands of people. This is one way in which they want to drain gold and silver from people, is unrealized capital gains tax. We talked about that on Saturday. Go look at my interview with Independence Money. Silver has been commoditized in support of industry. They got green programs, medicine, space, military. They want it as a commodity because they need it for their technocracy and for the military and for the satellites and technology and all that good stuff. It's going to be monetized by individual, already is. So those that have it, will be able to sell it at a really good price, minus taxes, of course. But the financial system will see it as a commodity. Those have diverged. And so those of you wondering how silver will play in the new system, silver is not being looked at as money. The elites don't look at it as money. The central banks don't look at it as money. I think silver could have a really high price because of industrial and monetary demand. And I think those that hold it could be at an advantage. Now, I'm not your financial advisor. Disclaimer: consult your financial advisor, consult your tax advisor, consult your accountant, your lawyer, and a whole army of approved individuals so the government doesn't come down on me for talking about silver. Do your own research. But what I think is silver will become immediately valuable because it's so valuable to the operating of the world that whoever has it is going to be able to command a pretty penny. I think it's going to be one of the most strategic materials in the world. But all of this pop in the silver price is not going to happen until a bunch of things happen. One, they want to get CBDCs in place. Okay. Two, they want to control gold and who owns it through taxes. Three, they want to get all commodity money out of the hands of people. Four, they need silver to go into the industry cheaply so they can build their technocracy. Once they're done with all that, once they revalue gold in the financial system, they'll let silver run as well. That's their plan. Our plan is to enact silver squeeze to say, but we think it's a valuable asset. We're not trying to do anything untoward in the market. We're just enthusiasts who believe that it's underpriced right now. And by squeezing the little available left, the 47 million ounces available left, which is not much overall, when demand by industry across the world is over 1 billion ounces a year, according to Silver Institute, those 47 million ounces aren't much. We're not trying to create a Hunt Brothers situation. We just own it. And yeah, we want to squeeze it because we think it's worth more. And we think once the derivative markets are no longer legitimately a pricing mechanism and we have a real fiscally delivered market, we'll see what silver is actually worth. And that will happen somewhere along the line to this new CBDC system, because they're not going to be able to keep a lid on it. Because I think the genie's out of the bottle with silver squeeze last year. And I said, again, going back to silver squeeze predictions confirmed, I said two things. I said the millennials will lead the charge, and they have. Fortunately, I was not able to load that video with Liberty and Finance from last February of 2021 because of YouTube problems. But I said it there. And on Chris's channel, I said, watch, there's going to be a runoff of Comex in London. That happened. London's admission a couple of months later, they almost ran out. The inventories we've seen drain consistently 1.5 years from Comex. I've documented, that was the first to document it. That prediction came true. And my prediction tying this together with CBDCs 12, 13 years ago, where I said China will develop its own fiat currency competitor to the dollar. And then I also said in 2018, 2019, we are going to, years later, I said, we're going to have the introduction of central bank digital currencies. Everybody's going to agree to it. A global rail system will be built. I just showed you that in the video with the BIS. All this stuff I've been covering ahead of time. Again, everybody talks about this on their channels. All those other YouTubers come to my channel to get the info, because usually I'm out ahead of most of them. Not all, but most of them. Lynette Zhang, I'll give her credit. She and I have been on the same page about the same time with a lot of this stuff. We've been way ahead of everybody. I'm tooting my own horn, only to let you know. If you want to know what's coming, come here. Again, this is free information. I'm just doing it for that reason. But just to show you some of the examples of where I've talked about some of these predictions and they come true. There's one other thing I want to show you guys. I have done over 30 confirmed predictions. I'm going to go back to my presentation. I talked about this back then. There were 5 that I went over in detail, and then I put this up. And all these, and I'll link to the actual articles. This used to be up on the website, 32 confirmed predictions and links to the article or the book or where I said it. It's not up on the website anymore. I'm going to put it up here. I've talked about all these things dating back to my book in 2010. They're going to happen. 32 confirmed predictions. These are big ones. We're talking about bankruptcy of Social Security. We're talking about pricing of gold and silver. We're talking about introduction of central bank digital currencies. We're talking about China doing an alternative currency to the dollar. We're talking about all this stuff. All this stuff I've been talking about for so long. That's my track record. That's where you know, am I full of S? Or do I know what I'm talking about? And that's why we build this as Cowboy Metals Live, 5:30 p.m. Central Time, every Tuesday. This is September 6, 2022 edition. And I say I broadcast from a great state of Texas, take no BS. When I say BS, I mean we're out ahead of everybody else. We're not just discussing as it happens. We're talking about way before it happens. And that's the value. And again, we've been right on this the whole time. Those of you that think that silver doesn't have a role, it has a role. I think it's being suppressed by the market because the market needs silver to run the technocracy and to run the next stage of the space race and the information age as we get information age from the Earth out into space. And that's happening. And all the governments are talking about space forces and satellites. All that's happening. And it's a gradual process of what happened over the next 30, 40, 50 years. They need silver for that. That's why they're not allowing silver to run. That's why Rost and Benham came out at 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙍 conference and said they tamped it down at 30. They didn't want to go over 30 because it would have panicked the market. Now, Rostin, I fully believe, was doing what he thought was best in his role as acting commissioner at the time. I don't think he was trying to scam anybody. The participants on the big commercial markets are the bullion banks, the companies that produce the silver, and the ones that need it, and then a bunch of speculators. For that market, not the retail market, not the everyday person, but for that market, I believe he kept silver from running away as a reverse circuit breaker. Think about the stock market. If Walmart tomorrow crashes down to $1 a share, it could freak the market out. So they do circuit breakers in some of these stocks because they know the algorithms will trade it all together and crash the stock. That's what circuit breakers are for. I think there's a circuit breaker on the top side of silver from the exchange of CME Group and CFTC because they admitted to doing this before, because they can't let it get above 30 because that screws up all the plans that the world wants to go to. You want to go to electric vehicles. You want to go to solar panels and green energy. You want to run silver in your technocracy. You want silver available not as a monetary, but as a commodity. That's why the upper circuit breaker limits have been put there. And I think they're doing it for what they think are good reasons. I don't think they're doing anything they think is untoward or immoral or illegal. I think they're doing what they think silver needs to be at to facilitate all the projects that are going on in the world, to facilitate all the participants in that market. Not for us individual silver holders, but for those guys. And that's why they did it. And that's why they'll continue to do it. I do eventually think that as we're seeing these inventories wind down, we're down to 47 million ounces on Comex. Who knows how much in London? It's an opaque market that doesn't have a lot of transparency. But we know it was close to running out last year when they said it was. LB issued an official report. We know we're really close on both of those markets liquidating. And if we get the generalists in from an investment perspective, that market's going to go boom. And I don't care what the spot price is on Comex. We've already seen the highest silver premiums we've ever seen in history as a percentage of price on silver right now in the retail market. And it's getting worse. And we haven't even gotten to the actual physical shortage. We still got 47 million ounces supposedly on Comex. If we get higher prices, maybe a few more ounces come out from people letting it go. But how much longer is that going to continue? We've drained over 100 million ounces off the Comex in 18 months. And we've seen, I showed you earlier in the broadcast what was coming out of the ETFs. But the silver's being pulled by the smart money. The bullion banks have realigned in the futures trade. They're making the managed money the dupes here. Okay, we know this is all aligning. Everything's aligning. We've seen the deliveries in silver. We've seen the warehouse stocks. We've seen, you know, what's going on with the commitment traders and the positioning in the futures market and the smart money going long. We know that silver is going to pop at some point, and so do the smart players. And I think that's all that's happening. So those of you that are worried, did silver squeeze work? It worked exactly as we said. They're pulling the physical off. We're pulling it off. The Reddit users are pulling it off. Followers of Arcadia Silver are pulling it off. Wall Street Silver, Rafi's followers, all us guys are pulling it off. All the smart money's pulling it off. We think Alice Walton came in and bought 50 million from Miles Franklin. They never divulged her name, but there are only a few billionaire S's in Texas. I happen to know one that lives near me. It wasn't her. So it had to be one of the other two. So we think it was Alice Walton. Could have been anybody, but they pulled 50 million off, including 900,000 silver eagles. A lot of wealthy people know the story. And what I said would be phase two, where you had this quiet behind the scenes liquidation of silver off the markets, where it didn't spike the price. When I said that 1.5 years ago, I was correct. And I was the only one saying it. Dave Kranzler said, you're full of crap. If I don't see it come out of eligible, it's not going to do anything. And I said, David, I think you're wrong, because eligible is private storage and registered is free market silver. And that's exactly what happened. A lot of people didn't believe me, but I'm changing minds now that this has happened. So we're closer in silver squeeze. Don't give up on it. And again, for those regulators and other legal types watching the show, we're not trying to corner a market. We're enthusiasts. We're not giving financial advice. Disclaimer, we're not giving financial advice. Everybody needs to contact their accountant. Everybody needs to contact their lawyer, contact their tax accountant, read 5,000 pages of information on how all this all works, watch every video of mine and everybody else's before they even think about doing anything. And don't trade on this, but this is what I'm doing. And I'm pointing out that what I said was coming true will come true. It has come true so far. So if you're in here and you're worried about silver, don't worry. Everything's going according to Hoyle. We're not trying to corner the market. It's a bunch of enthusiasts just liking it. It's a bunch of people needing it for industrial purposes, taking it off the commercial markets. It's all of those players in there for different reasons, but all those reasons are coming together at the same time, and that's going to cause a run in silver eventually. Again, we're not trying to corner it. I have a few ounces. Other people have a few ounces. Some people need it for whatever industrial purpose. The big players are in Comex taking it out. People are going to SLV. Everybody's going everywhere. So it's not just a bunch of us conspiracy theorists. They're going to try to label us conspiracy theorists who are trying to corner the silver market and doing something illegal. No, the CFTC tried to investigate that last time, and it's hard to indict millions of people, some of which are industrial users and merchants, and others which are big wealthy family offices, then a bunch of silver enthusiasts, Wall Street Silver, Arcadia Economics, Gold Silver Pros, all these channels. We're not cornering the market. It's a bunch of different people, but we're all smart and we all see what's going on. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. And again, silver squeeze is going on. It's behind the scenes right now, phase two. Phase three is when you see the pop and it becomes more obvious to your cab driver. CNBC finally covers it. Those dolts over there, which don't cover commodities markets very well, certainly not precious metals, you're going to see it. So it's there. Don't worry. We're documenting it. Go to Rafi. I know everybody loves Rafi and watch his videos. Go to Rafi and watch him on Arcadia Economics. Go to Endgame Investor on Seeking Alpha, where I was friends with him, and we wrote together on Seeking Alpha for all those years. Follow Rafi. Follow Mike Sayre, my channel moderator who does this over Twitter. Follow our channel. We're all documenting it. But again, I was the first one in this space to say phase two would be a quiet running off of the markets, and then phase three would be the blow off. It would be the big bull market. We're getting to the end of phase two, getting closer and closer and closer to where we don't have this physical inventories. And eventually we'll get to the part where you have a price pop. So if you went to Silver Symposium in Washington last week and you're like, oh my God, silver down like $18, $17. I can't take it anymore. That's futures price. Zero to do with deliveries. When there aren't deliveries to be made anymore, when there's no silver to be made, that derivative price won't matter. Why? It's one side taken long, one side short on a short-term contract, betting on the price for a future delivery month. If there are no silver to deliver, what's going to happen? All those shorts are going to go long, and all those longs are going to go even more long, and you're going to see a massive drive in Comex. But even if Comex doesn't catch up to the physical retail, you'll still see it pop. But I think people are going to pay attention to physical retail. And again, the admission that silver is short and there's more investment demand than there is supply is encapsulated in the difference between spot, that futures traded price, which had nothing to do with physical delivery on the Comex, and the prices that you see at your retail dealer. Again, the commission or the premiums as a percentage of silver price are higher than they've ever been in history that we know of, and that's documented in modern documented market history, because there's more retail demand than there is supply. And spot, that derivative trade, holds that price in a range that the market needs. That I explained to you why Rostin Benham, as acting CFTC commissioner, did what he did when he said at Boca V, this is why I did it, and why we as the regular stepped in and tamped that market. The market needs the silver, okay? And it's being drained, and they see this. They're not stupid. They see it. And so that system will work until it doesn't. And I think China and Russia and the US and all these companies are trying to get their silver to build all the stuff they need whether it be their EVs or all the technocracy and all the controls around CBDCs and all the stuff the silver's needed for, everybody's grabbing. And it's when there's no more left to grab. It's when you see phase 3, silver pop off, and everybody says, oh, silver squeeze did work. Well, it's worked the whole way. And I've documented on this channel, and I was the first one to call it, and it's exactly like I said it would be. Now, for those of you wondering, is Rob any good at what the hell he does? Let's go back over some predictions, shall we? Here's a list of 32. Let's go back over this one. 13 years ahead of time, I talked about China developing a competitor to the dollar as an alternative currency, where I talked about the global yield curve inversion in this article leading to an American yield curve inversion leading to a recession, which we're in, 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP, even though the White House refuses to acknowledge it. And then I had one where I talked about stocks are a Ponzi scheme and how the stock market was going to crash. Remember, this was after the last quarter of 2018 when it had 20% correction. Everybody thought it was over. I came out in February 27, 2019, said, nope, we're going to have another one. And I documented exactly how this liquidation this year would occur. And I said, this is why it'll occur. I didn't the specific date, but I said exactly how it would occur. And I nailed it. And then, of course, the runoff on gold and silver stocks. And then the other 27 predictions that I made. By the way, one that I made that has not come true, but will come true, is that U.S. implements nominal negative interest rates in the banking system, not on its debt necessarily, but in the banking system for the CBDCs, because that was in the IMF position paper in 2015. I wrote about in 2019 on Seeking Alpha in this article. And digital money in the banking system. We know with Fednow that digital money is here. In fact, I want to look at that Fednow real quick, and I'm going to show it to you guys. If I can get to Fednow, we're going to talk about Fednow. Fednow is where they want to do, and I may not be able to find the exact article, but what they want to do is they want to use Fednow to essentially be a payment system. Here it is. And so they're going to do it from one institution to another in the bank. Remember when I said negative interest rates in the banking system? When you put $100 in through direct deposit and they give you 95 or 90, they're discounting your cash. They're giving you less. That's in the banking system. What does Fednow also do? Fednow allows you to do bank-to-bank transfers directly to someone. Right now, you use PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, whatever. Now they're going to do it in the banking system. You don't have to have all these other layers. Why? They want to get rid of all competing apps like PayPal and Venmo and all apps you can transfer money, put it all through the banking system so they can see every transaction you make and they can control it and discount the value of what you earn directly in your bank account. So they don't have to enact certain tax laws. They don't have to put out a bunch of debt. They can do it all electronically through the system. And the use cases are all over there. If you look at the use cases, it's everything. They want to do person to person. They want to do prepaid cards, mobile wallet. Okay, think about mobile wallet. They don't want you to use Venmo and PayPal or Cash App. They want you to use Fednow. They want investment management accounts. Instead of Schwab, they want to help you manage money flows using Fednow. Corporate cash pooling, paying bills, e-invoicing, all of it. They want all of it. Fednow will be the system where they control all the banking in the system. And the CBDC will be the unit of measure on their centralized controlled ledger, which actually keeps track of the transactions. But the system is going to start as Fednow. Why? Because that's the banking system. That's the central bank. The central banks want to maintain power control. They want to issue a CBDC, discount that however they want in the banking system before you ever touch it, discounting your labor, the value of your labor before you touch it to control aggregate monetary flows and put that Fednow system in place and get rid of all the competitors so they can track every dime that moves through the economy and stop and control anything they want to because of anti-money laundering laws or other laws they already have on the books. If they don't want you to transact, they're going to claim you did some sort of crime, and all the banks will just automatically lock down your account. How do I know this? Well, I went and looked at bank accounts a couple of years ago, and according to the law, the federal law, they're not supposed to be able to lock your bank account down for anything, but they do anyway, because I went to my bank account and said, if the IRS came to you and said, we have an open case, would they lock your account down? They said yes. And I said, even though it's not legal to do so, they said yeah. And in other cases where the government could do it. Now, a lot of people say there's good reasons for that, and I think there are, but if they're going to start doing it to everybody, obviously we're not all money launderers. I'm not. We're not all doing drug transactions. I don't. So a lot of that doesn't apply to us, but they'll use those controls to control that system. So that's my silver squeeze predictions. That's a little bit more from the conference and this saga about how I've been documenting the new CBD system and how they're going to control it. If you want an alternative outside that system, you have to use an alternative. It could be Bitcoin or Ethereum if the government allows it to stand, or it could be gold and silver. You have to decide for yourself what that is. I'm not your financial advisor. I'm going gold and silver. That's my currency of choice outside the system. We'll see what happens. We'll see if they make it illegal. We'll see if they just tax the hell out of it. We'll see if the unrealized gains bankrupts everybody that has anything. We'll see what happens. But that's the system, and putting the two together. Where does gold play in that? Central bank level. Not in your hands, in their hands. They want it all. Where you get the digital currencies, which they discount anytime they want by any amount they want. That's in the IMF paper. And you get that transaction system where everything's tracked through Fednow. And then you get the rail system, which I showed you, which connects everything. And then the silver becomes a commodity. And that's what we're trying to do. They're trying to get rid of gold and silver as money. Gold will be an asset on the banks of the balance sheets of the central banks, not owned by anybody anymore, except for a few, coin dealers, as an anachronism of old money they don't want you to have. Silver is going to be commoditized. They have to hold the price of silver down right now to get all this technocracy in place and to build the next layer into space, which is what they're doing. And then, but eventually the market will overwhelm and silver will pop. That's why they're getting the cheap silver now. Why do you think they're getting the ounces now? They know when silver pops, it's going to be 3, 4, 5 times the price, probably. So they got to get it now for whatever use they need. So tying all those together, this presentation tied all of that together. Ridge Runner says Rob's yelling at us again. Sorry, I'm not trying to yell Ridge Runner, but I get very passionate about this stuff. All right, that's my presentation. Thank you, Dumb Money Media, for giving a contribution like you always do. Everybody go to Dumb Money Media's channel on YouTube, Dumb Money Media. Go watch his meme videos. I'll play the next batch that he has next time I'm on the channel. He's a big sport artist. We want to do that. Don't have time to do it today. I'm running a bit long because of technology problems. But thank you, Dumb Money Media, for being there. Everybody go to his channel. Last thing I want to say is this. I went to Silver Symposium in Washington, and I had 4 presentations. I had like 3 roundtables and a keynote on the second day. I also was volunteered to be a part of a lot of other panels, as people, for some reason, couldn't make it. They had a flight issue or something. So I got on a bunch. I was on like 9 or 10 of these during the 2 days. In between those panels, I would go back to my booth, and Ian was there selling gold and silver. And I was there just interacting with people. And there were so many people that walked up to me and said, Rob, the information that you put out is so high quality. I never would have known this. I've had people tell me I've saved their life. I'm not joking. I've had people tell me they changed their entire viewpoint on the financial system. I've had people tell me that I provide an angle that nobody else does, going back to the Arthur Schopenhauer quote. And this is essentially who we are. I'm going to put this up. This is the beginning of my presentation. It's this quote here from Arthur. He says, the task is not so much to see what no one else sees, but to think what no one else has thought about that which everyone sees. We do that better here at Gold Silver Pros than anybody else, and I'm not being conceited. That's what I'm told by people, and I know that people follow us after we predict something, and that comes out everywhere else 6 months later. And that is flattery. Imitation is a form of flattery, and I appreciate that. But what we do is we talk about what other people don't talk about. And when people come up to me at conferences and say, Rob, you have changed my life forever on what you've done, that's why I do what I do, and that's why I do it for free. I cannot describe to you the feeling that I get and the satisfaction I get when people come up to me and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's worth everything that we do, and it's worth more than any money I could ever receive or any public attention I get from being on YouTube. None of that matters anything without you guys. You guys are my fuel. You're why I do what I do. I appreciate you very much. Thank you so much for supporting us on the channel through shadow bans, through just all sorts of shit that we've had to put up with. You guys have always been there, and you mean everything to me, and you're why I do what I do. And I'm very sincere when I say that. It's no bullshit. Thank you so much for being a part of the channel. Thank you for being so much a part of the live stream. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to cover this till the day I die, or we finally get freedom in markets, and maybe I'll cover it after. I don't know. They'll never stop me. You'll find me here or somewhere else. I'll never stop. If I have to break out the typewriter and mail out letters, I'll do that. But what I'll say is this: you drive me, and you're why I do it, and I'm always going to be here for you guys. I promise you that. So stick with the channel through thick and thin. Trust me on predictions. I have a history of being right. Silver Squeeze is going exactly like I said. Don't worry about it. Just if you believe in the silver story and you've consulted your financial advisor and you believe that's true and you made that choice, disclaimer, stick with it. Don't give up. Don't give up at the 11th hour before you realize your gains. Also, go watch the video I put out on Saturday with Independence Money. We're talking about taxes. If you're not estate planning and tax planning around your precious metals, your real estate and all that stuff, pay attention. We put some links in there for the new Inflation Act. We have the interview over the Budget Act and what it's doing to taxes. Pay attention to all that, guys. It all matters. It's all important. taxes matter. That could be the biggest thing to hit your portfolio, and go with the experts. Independence Money experts. I gave you a couple other links to Kiplinger's and other places, organizations that talk about those tax changes for you to educate yourself. Again, it's education. It's not telling you what to do. I'm not a broker. I'm just educating you so you can make your own best choice. All right, with all those disclaimers and all the technology issues, we are now done. I'm going to take my son to Taekwondo, and I'm going to relax the rest of the night. Thank you, everybody, for joining. You are my fuel to my fire. I appreciate you. Until next time, Rob Keats, Gold, Silver Pros.